I'm joined here today with my colleague Sai. Hi guys, show your faces. Show your faces so that people would, hi Becca, people would know you. You'll find that a lot of our attendees today are familiar with faces. Where's Nancy, Iman, colleagues in country? All right, so let me quickly start. Today's webinar is very specific. We're going to speak about guiding students to UK medicine schools, which is a request that we got a lot in previous webinar. So we thought to speak to our agents and counselors, and we partnered with, of course, British International Doctors Association, BIDA, and UCAS to give you the information from the experts. We are joined today by our colleague from UCAS, Becka Horsely, who's the Customer Success Partner, and Dr. Sai Pillarisetti, who's the Postgraduate Chairman of the British International Doctors Association and Head of International Partnerships for Medicine at University of Bolton, and Dr. Ahmed Boksomaty, who is a clinic, our actually is a Chevening scholar, completed his master's degree in Imperial College London, and is currently a clinical researcher, educator, and a PhD candidate at the Institute of Global Health and Innovation, Imperial College London. So we have all our speakers together to help you answer many of the questions you asked. I'm your host for today and facilitator of the webinar, Nesma Mostafa. I lead the Middle East and North Africa higher education portfolio at the British Council, parts of it, including Insights and student mobility at the British Council. So this is our agenda for today. I'm going to give you an introduction about the webinar. We'll give you a bit of insights into students going from MENA to the UK to study medicine. And then Becca will cover the applications for undergraduate students. Dr. Sai will cover successful admissions to UK schools of medicine, how to prepare your students for interviews, and entry exams, the graduate route. And Dr. Ahmed Boksomaty will give you insights from firsthand experience about the value of studying medicine in the UK and postgraduate options. We'll touch upon scholarships too. Before we go any further, I'd like to also request from you three things. If your name does not show, if you show up as a guest in the list, we'll not know who you are. So please make sure to change your name to first and last name if possible. And then also colleagues will be sharing in the chat a sign-in form where you could complete your information so that we know who attended and then be able to share with you the resources shared in the webinar post the event. And if you have any questions, post your questions as we speak in the Q&A section. So you have like different blocks for questions for British Council, questions for UCAS, for BIDA, and for Dr. Ahmed too. Okay, so now a bit about you. We want to know who's on the call. Let me share a poll. And just give me a second until this works. So who's on board? A poll will appear now. And I know that we have also some students with us. I just want to flag that this webinar is aimed at student advisors and the amazing people who guide students into studying abroad or into choosing a career in general. So counselors at schools and agents too. But I know that we have some students with us. So let us know. If you're a student, let us know. Great. Welcome. Can you post in the chat where you're joining us from? So I'm calling you from, joining you from Cairo, Egypt. Let us know where you're joining us from in the chat, please. Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, Jeddah, Qatar, Birmingham, Jordan, lots of Dubai, Cairo, Libya, amazing. Scotland now, Morocco. Lovely, lovely. A very diverse group of people. Keep it coming in. Saudi Arabia. Lovely. Let me know a bit more about you. If you are an agent or a counselor, or if part of your job is guiding students to study in a particular university, so guiding them through higher education, can you please respond to this poll? So if you know about our Agents and Counselors Hub, are you on the hub? So you have two options if you're on the hub. Yes, and I have completed my training. Yes, and I'm in process to complete my training. And no, I'm not, and I'd love to. You'd love to. Please keep responses coming in because that will guide us into supporting you throughout the webinar, giving you the information you'll need. Super. Super, super. Hi, Muhammad. Anta. Lovely diversity. Certified agents and counselors too. Thank you for joining again. Today, let me go back to sharing my screen and starting my slides. Okay. So now I have an idea who's on the call. We have 95 people who joined us. And let me go back to my slides and share with you this. So more than 22,000 international medical students choose to study in the UK. I want to know from you as practitioners, as people working with students, to share with me why. In the chat, just drop in the chat, why do you think international students choose to study medicine in the UK? That's my question. I'll go back to chat to see your responses. Why do you think? Why do your students tell you if they do, I would like to study in the UK, whether undergraduates or postgraduates? Worldwide recognized system, the NHS, quality, popular destination for diverse community, of course. The ranking is another thing. Opportunities. Shorter duration programs, universal. Yes. Direct entry, job opportunities, lovely. Yeah, you've covered. Oh, keep them coming in. I'm just mindful of the time, so I'll run through my slides. So yeah, you covered the reasons, but let me go quickly through the slides. So you find this information on Study UK. So 4 of the world's top 10 medicine universities are in the UK, but world-class teaching is right across the country. There's a chance to practice in the real world, as you mentioned. The student graduates graduating feeling ready to take their skills and experience anywhere, and many of the UK university hospitals are pioneering treatments. Qualification is recognized around the world, and there are more than 60 specialisms. Quick insights from MENA. So students from MENA, this is data from Higher Education Statistical Agency, and it looks at numbers of students studying in UK universities, basically. And unfortunately, the data is not separated between dentistry and medicine. So these are numbers of students from the region studying in the UK, both medicine and dentistry. And over the 3 years, 1920 to 2022, over 7,000 students from MENA were enrolled in medicine and dentistry in the UK. Highest number comes from Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. And both Saudi Arabia and the reason could be both Saudi Arabia and Kuwait have strong scholarship schemes offered to citizens and prioritize these majors. If we're looking at source of funding, who's paying for students going on these majors to study in the UK? We have 47% of students studying in medicine and dentistry in MENA were on government scholarships in 21-22. 39 were self-funded and 14% received other source of funding. So these could include scholarships from the UK, from their universities, from their employer, so other sources of funding. Again, if we look at who's sponsoring students, government in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia are among the highest percentages of providing scholarships for their citizens. Very quickly, if you're guiding your students to study in the UK or in anywhere, actually, you need to be very aware of policies and equivalency of degrees. So make sure that national equivalency policies the student is aware of and the degree is matching these policies. So that when the students graduated, they can actually use their degree at home. For example, Saudi medicine undergraduate degree has to be 5 years plus internship to be recognized in Saudi. In Kuwait, there's a list of approved universities that students can study at, but also of approved programs within the university. In Oman, students need to request approval for studying abroad, even if they're self-funded or they risk having the degree not recognized at home. So also other things to check is the contact hours versus online learning. Sometimes that matters. University branches may be treated differently from home universities. So if a branch campus is in a country and it's a UK university, sometimes it's not treated equally in the government from the government perspective, depending on the government regulations. And sometimes even the language of instruction matters. Scholarships available, you've requested this information a lot. So check this website, the Study UK has scholarships for students coming from different parts of the world. The MENA region is full of expats, so not necessarily born and not necessarily citizens, but residents. So these scholarship could be relevant to them, and we could easily go to the scholarship page, select undergraduate or postgraduate, whatever, and then the major you're looking for, and then the nationality. So when I looked here, I see 162 scholarships from 51 institutions offer undergraduate degrees in health and medicine without selecting a nationality. So check these out. Now, yes. Now, last poll before we move to our next speaker, Becka Horsely. Last poll I'll share with you. I want to know the challenges you face while guiding your students in applying for undergraduate and postgraduate degrees in medicine in the UK. So let me share this word cloud quickly. And yes. So can you please write down one word, one challenge you face while guiding students to studying medicine in the UK? You have budget, exams, admissions, acceptance rate, prerequisites. Keep them coming, keep them coming. equivalency, of course. All right, keep them coming. We'll keep looking at them. We'll view the results again. Now let me welcome Becka. Thank you for being part of our webinars. Every webinar so far, Becka has been part of. Who recognizes from our audience, Becka, who showed up before?
I can see some names who've emailed me as well, actually, in the audience. So you've got a very engaged region, Nesma.
Happy to
yes,
hear that.
I will share my slides now.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think somebody actually only emailed me yesterday. Okay, can everybody see my slides? Can you see Nesma?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as Nesma said, I'm Becka and I work at UCAS with our international advisor community. But prior to joining UCAS, I've worked at 4 different universities within the UK. 2 of those universities had medical schools attached to them. And for one of those universities, I would serve as the non-medical staff on the interviewing panel for that medical school. So I have got a bit of background in this area. So the first thing I'm going to draw your attention to with medical school, which hopefully you all know, is that it is one of the early deadline courses. So we have that 15th of October deadline. That's for medicine or dentistry as well, or veterinary medicine. But it's really important if you're working with students that you understand they are working to that early October deadline. And medicine is a course that it is very, very unlikely will go into clearing. So you really do need to be meeting that deadline for your students. We'd also say that due to needing to take additional tests and things like that, you shouldn't really be starting work with your students on the year that they're wanting to apply. You should be starting to work with them a couple of years in advance. If you're starting to look at this in kind of September, it's unlikely you're going to be able to get everything in place for that 15th of October deadline. So we'd strongly recommend a couple of years kind of lead time on that. And most students that want to go on and do medicine, they do know about that in advance. It's not kind of a last minute decision for them. So we're going to have some key facts about medical school in the UK. So as a lot of people have said in the things that are a driving reason for why they'd like to study in the UK, is that you can enter medical school straight out of high school. You don't have to do that bachelor's degree and then medicine as a postgraduate course necessarily, the same way as you do in many other countries. So that saves you time and that saves you money as part of the process. Degrees are normally 5 years in length. Some universities do offer the option to do something called an intercalating year, which is where you complete another course of study in the middle of your degree, which would obviously make that up to 6 years. Some medical schools do also offer a foundation year at the beginning of the programme, so that would obviously add an additional year onto that as well. But typically 5 years of actual study. And then if you're wanting to do your foundation years, like post-study for becoming a doctor, those would be after as well. I'm sure one of the other presenters later in the session will give you a bit more information about those. Something else to raise awareness of in the UK is that there are multiple placements throughout your course of study, which is great. You're getting that hands-on experience, and those will be in diverse settings. So some would be in a hospital, some might be in a doctor's practice. But do take into account that you need to be able, as a student, to get between those placements. They might not always be exactly where the university is, so have that in mind as well as part of your budget and your ability to travel. I think a couple of people have mentioned already in the difficulties are the international student caps for medicine. So some of these will be a set number of students, which tends to be the newer medical schools, and others it will be a percentage of their total intake that can be allocated to international. And we do have, as Nesma said earlier, a high number of medical schools. They're spread across all 4 nations of the UK. So England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And we do have some of the top medical schools in the world. So some of the requirements for medical school in the UK, I will put the caveat here that everything will vary slightly institution to institution. So always make sure that your students are checking directly with the university that they're wanting to go to. So these are quite broad statements, but the general idea of what they'll be looking for is quite similar. So students should be expecting to have a high level of academic attainment, and there'll be that heavy focus on sort of science and maths-based subjects. And a lot of universities, they'll want to see historical evidence of attainment as well. So it's not just that final exam they're leaving school with. They want to see that the student has been strong academically throughout their career. So they might look back to exams they've taken a bit earlier in their studies to ensure that they are consistently performing well. As again, many people have mentioned in the chat, there are medicine-based tests for entry into university, and which one is accepted, again, will vary institution to institution, so make sure you are checking that directly, and make sure that you understand about the logistics of booking that in, whether it's available in your country, whether you need to travel, whether it's something that can be taken online, make sure that you understand all of that with enough time to be able to book yourself in as a student. And because for your placements, you would be working with members of the public, you will be asked to complete a criminal record background check. So some universities, they may ask you to provide this from your home country, and some may also ask you to complete the documentation in the UK, which is called a DBS check in some countries, or an enhanced disclosure if you're going to be applying to Scotland. And that would have to come back, obviously satisfactory to the university that you're going to be fine to go on those placement elements of your course and deal with patients. They'd also request that you complete something called an occupational health check, which shows that you are going to be capable of performing the role of a doctor, so physically and mentally. It doesn't mean that if you have something like a mental health condition or a physical disability, you cannot go to medical school. It's just making sure that there can be accommodations made for you to succeed, and there's an understanding of what you perhaps need slight differences in your placements and things like that, but it's not something that's going to bar you from becoming a doctor. Also, we'd need evidence of a high level of English proficiency. So if your students are submitting an English exam, for example, an IELTS, a TOEFL, that would normally be requested to be a much higher level than a standard bachelor's degree, because a large part of this course involves verbally interacting with the public. They need to know that you're going to be able to do that. And obviously in your career as a doctor afterwards, you're going to be dealing with people, talking to them, making notes every day. So it's really important. So again, something you can be doing to help your students prepare is getting them working on that English. If it's not their curriculum isn't already studied in English, they can start preparing that early and start trying to take the IELTS TOEFL tests equivalent to make sure that they've got that in place as well. There's also a lot of interpersonal traits that people need. You need to think you're not just going to be studying the medical degree, you're going to be being a medical professional after the degree. So schools will also look for the right attitude. So simple things like interview etiquette, which I think one of my fellow presenters is going to talk about a bit later, and having that right attitude, those interpersonal skills as well, to really show that you're not just going to be academically capable, but also capable in a social sense, and have those people skills that you need to work in this, as well as other things like good time management, good teamwork. And that's what these interviews would serve to assess. And again, this interview style might vary slightly between institutions. I think my colleague's going to speak about that on their presentation. There was a lot of questions about the personal statement for medical school. So some of the core fundamental points of the personal statement remain. So the universities will still be looking for the evidence of why. A lot of people were questioning about experience, so we'll go into that in a moment, and a demonstration of those skills that I just mentioned. So why? We do ask for this for any course within the UK, and that is ultimately showing your passion and your drive for why you're wanting to take this course of study. So normally for medicine, they're not going to be looking for things like it's a well-paying job at the end. They're going to be looking for things like a genuine desire to help people, to improve the world, to support others. So that would be kind of the motivations. And then the other sections are about ways that you have prepared through your study. But remember here that most students for medicine will have taken quite similar academic subjects. So you should be focusing on how those subjects have prepared you. So things just like saying, I studied biology, so I know about anatomy. it would be better to put something like, I studied 3 very complex A-levels, for example, if you're taking that international curriculum, and this taught me good time management and workload management skills. So it's good to draw out what you learned from what it was that you were studying. And then the final section is about what you've done beyond your studies to prepare yourself. So a lot of people are quite concerned about the work experience element. And again, you will need to check institution to institution what it is they require as part of these work experience elements. But it's not necessarily has to be shadowing a doctor. Some of them say it can be healthcare experience. So something like volunteering to work with elderly people in a care facility, that would still show a lot of the skills needed, and that would be something that you could include in your personal statement, because it still shows things like you've got compassion, you've got patience, you have an understanding of the full life cycle of a person. So those would still be valuable things to put in there. We'd also say things that show your curiosity could be really useful here. So for example, if you are thinking you are interested in a particular area of medicine, you can research about this independently. Perhaps you've watched a TED Talk, perhaps you've followed a dermatologist on Instagram because that's the area that you would be interested to go into. And we do have something that can help with this on the UCAS website. So we have something called our subject spotlights, which is where you can go in. It's completely free. And we have some courses that are affiliated with universities. And you can take a sample, see what it is, and obviously say you've completed that bit of study, which looks really good that you've taken that option to do that independently. And you can quote things like that in your personal statement. I've shared some links to some of those sample courses at the end of this presentation, so when you get the slides, you can take a look at those. We'd also say that something that will be really useful is to, if possible, speak to people who are doing the job currently, or doing a similar job, or a student of medicine, perhaps, to have that understanding of what it means to be a doctor. And you can include that you've done that in your personal statement. Again, you're showing that you've done that independent research, you're genuinely interested in the profession, and that's something that you can definitely include in there. We do know that for medicine, so obviously normally with UCAS you can apply to 5 different options. For medicine, you can only apply to 4 medical schools, and then your 5th option needs to be something different. People normally do something quite similar to medicine, for example, biomedical sciences, still in the same sphere. We know that you then are writing a personal statement for 2 different courses. Universities are familiar with this. They know that you're only allowed to apply to your 4 medicine, so that for example, biomedical will be slightly different. You can sometimes contact the university and see if they're happy to accept an alternative personal statement for that additional 5th course, but they will have that understanding when they're reading the personal statement that it was tailored towards your 4 medical choices. Okay, so I'm just going to show you the resources that we've put together as well. So we've got the subject spotlight, as I mentioned. So there's ones, for example, on basic life support and the central nervous system. There are more than these on our website. We've just put a little sample, but if you click through when you get to those pages, that will be able to show you some different courses that you have available to you there. And as I said, those are free to take, and those are available to international students as well. You don't have to be within the UK to access them. We have a career goal program, which is where we interviewed a student who's gone through the process about how they ended up where they were, about knowing that they wanted to do this as a course of study and what they took to get there. So that's a really interesting read. We have our subject guides, specifically for medicine. So again, you can go in and read that. It's also useful for your 5th choice course to understand what you might want to apply to alongside medicine. The personal statement guide specifically for medicine, and there's also a lot of handy tips and advice on the Medical Council website. We do also have a piece written by one of our universities with an international focus on applying to medical school, which will be going up on our website in the next week or 2. So if you're signed up to our advisor newsletter, you'll get a copy of that when that's ready to go live, and you can read from the perspective of an admissions tutor at one of the universities in the UK with the medical school. I'm just going to start the questions off with a few questions that people asked me that I haven't included in the presentation. So somebody was asking about under 18s. So typically for this, I would advise to check with the university. So some universities can accept under 18s to their institution. For medical, because you're doing those placements, it will depend on things like, for example, what the university's general policy is. When the student is going to turn 18, for example, if they turn 18 3 days after they arrive, that's very different from turning 18 in 10 months' time. And when their first placement is as well. So that I would always say check directly with the university. We'd also say that somebody asked about scholarships, which I think Nesma has already covered, but any university offered scholarships, again, speak to the university directly. They'll tell you if there is anything specifically available, because normally for medicine, students don't have the time to work as well as their studies because it's a very intensive course. And then the final question was just somebody was asking about how to become an agent working with a medical school. So again, if you just speak to the international office at the university you're interested in working with, they'll be able to explain that agent process to you as well. So I will now open up to any other questions that people might have. I don't know, let's see if there's anything in the Q&A already.
There's one about a particular exam, English language exam, the one for healthcare professionals, the OET.
Okay.
Whether this is...
So my understanding of this is from the institutions I've worked at, they didn't accept it. I believe it's more for practicing in the UK if you've got a medical degree from another country, in my experience. But again, check with each university. They may have a different policy to the one that I worked at. But yeah, that is my understanding of that qualification. Perhaps one of my colleagues later might know a little bit more about that as well. But certainly the institution I was working at, they didn't accept that qualification. Someone's asked specifically about the Indian standard qualification. So again, for a specific qualification, the best thing to do is to go onto the website of the university, and they will have there listed what the international qualifications they need for each entry course, and then they will tell you if you need to take a foundation or not. It may depend on what grades you've achieved in that qualification, but yeah, I would check always directly with either the admissions team or the international team at the university. Let me see, has anything else come in? I think that was just those two for me.
Yes. Okay. But we have some, so some asked about specific requirements for IG students, specific requirements for IB students.
Yeah.
That's also...
So again, that would be to check specifically with the university. I'm sorry, I think we cut out
that
there.
Makes perfect sense, yes.
Yes, but that may, if you've taken English at a higher level and achieved a high enough grade, that may exempt you from the language requirement, which may mean you don't need to take an external language test if you've achieved highly, for example, in the International Baccalaureate English. So that may be something you don't need to prepare. But again, check with the university what level they need that to be able to exempt you from that language test.
We have another question coming in. So can we submit the statement just once, which will go to all universities?
Yes, so the statement that's submitted through the UCAS application process goes to all of your 5 choices. So we always recommend don't say, I'm really excited about going to University X, because all the other universities will see that. But again, because that 5th choice will not be medicine, some universities will accept you emailing them a new copy of the personal statement directly for that 5th choice. So again, if you contact the university and say, I've applied to 4 medical schools, this is my 5th additional choice, can I send you a copy of a correct personal statement for the choice I'm applying to? And then they will tell you if that's possible or not. You can do that research in advance if you want to really be careful with your choices, or you can address that afterwards if you're wanting to kind of risk it and see if they'll take that afterwards. But again, they understand that it's broadly in the same medical field. They understand that you've written that statement for medicine. So that will be fine to do that. And they'll be used to people contacting them to ask to provide a new statement. And then that's a visa question. So I'm going to leave that to somebody else. I think we're not permitted to give visa advice. But yeah, I'll keep an eye on the questions. If anything comes in throughout, I can stick around till the end if there's any extra time, or type answers if that's helpful.
Of course. There are a few in the chat, not in the Q&A section. I don't know if you are able to respond to, speak to any of these. So there's one on UCAT and admission process.
Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so someone's asked, is UKVI IELTS mandatory? So again, each university will say which formal language test they can accept, but some institutions will allow, some people may be exempt by nationality, and some people may be exempt if they've taken their qualifications in English throughout school, for example, the International Baccalaureate, or if they've studied in the British curriculum or the American curriculum, they may be exempt. So again, check with the institution before you pay for a language test there. So the weightage and the way that universities use their admissions test will vary slightly. So again, I can't speak on behalf of a particular university. I know that some universities do publish exactly how the breakdown of their assessment process. So you can look on their website, or again, if you get in touch with the admissions tutor at the medical school, or you speak to the international team, they'll be able to give you a bit of a better breakdown about how they use all the different things they've received as part of the application process. So interview dates, again, interview dates will vary institution to institution, and the process will also vary. Some may require you to come in person to the UK, some may be online. So again, that will affect things when those interview dates will be. But because we know there's that interview process, that's typically why part of the reason why we have that earlier deadline to allow time for that interview process as well. Okay, and then someone's just said about the Q&As. I'm just going to go back, check. There's another Q&A.
Oh, there's another Q&A.
Yep. So Kiran, with the scholarships, again, universities will set their own scholarships for their international students. So if you browse on their website, that will be very easy to find on there. And again, their recruitment staff will be able to tell you more about the eligibility for those. And I'm sure Nesma will be able to send you the information about the scholarships that she shared earlier. And then Sammy, I think those were you put those in the chat as well. So I think I've hopefully answered your questions. Okay, so if you're saying a student wants to go for medicine in 2025, if you mean starting their course in 2025, they really need to be looking at that ASAP, because obviously the application deadline is in just over a month. If you're meaning they want to submit their application in 2025, they've obviously got that little bit longer. So I would start researching that now, but also check that the institutions they're applying to is the UCAT that they're wanting. They don't have any other test format. We'd say check that really thoroughly, make sure you are taking the right tests. Oh, someone else. Again, Lipika, so some universities will share that information on their website. So for example, I mentioned we've got an article coming out in a few weeks about this, and that university does share their number of international seats, and others may say it's a percentage, so that won't be a specific number, but you'll be able to get a rough idea. So is there a link on UCAS to understand how to enter education qualifications? So there's not a specific page, but it's part of our training courses on the professional development platform. So I will put the link to that when I send out these slides, so you can access that and see those modules. If you're not a UCAS Register Centre, I'll explain to you how to do that so you can have access to those training courses for those curriculums. Okay, I think that's everything answered, Nesma.
As always, cannot thank you enough, Becca, for being with us and for a thorough presentation and for taking the time to answer all our audience's questions. And you're happy for us to circulate the slides also?
Yep, so I'll edit them to put in that PDP link. I'll send you a new copy with that link and how to become a centre if the person who was asking the question wasn't already a centre, so they can sign up to get access, and that's free to do that. You don't need to pay.
Super.
Okay.
We'll wait for that, and we will be circulating Becca's presentation on other colleagues, other speakers' presentation post-event. But please make sure you sign in the form. If colleagues can share the form, the sign-in form again in the chat, so that our attendees sign up for it. Becca, thank you so much, and I'm sure there's going to be more questions coming in. But I understand you have a busy day, so I'm happy to collate these and share with you if they show up. But happy also to have you with us for as much as you want. Thank you, Becca. Our next guest speaker is Dr. Sai. Dr. Sai, are you here?
Hi, Nesma, I'm here, just sharing my slides, thank you.
Take your time. Thank you so much for being with us today and for actually everyone, it was Dr. Sai's idea to have this webinar. So it's like there's a deadline coming up, and since the region is interested in schools of medicine, why don't we co-do an event around particularly the field of medicine? And so thanks to you, we have today, and we have an amazing engaged audience who have a lot of questions. So thank you for taking the time to put together this presentation and for being with us today.
Thank you, Nesma. So can I just check everyone can see my screen? Because I'm not sure if this is visible to everyone.
It was visible, now it's not.
How about now? Nesma, would you mind sharing my slides if that's okay?
Yeah, of course.
I just think it
Yeah,
might
I
be
can do
easier.
that.
Thank you.
Just a second. Yes, just give me a second. I'll
No worries.
fill that up. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Can everybody see the slides?
Lots of thumbs
All
ups
right.
going on. Yeah, perfect. No, thank you. So yeah, just a quick introduction. My name is Dr. Sai Pillarisetti. So I'm a doctor based in the UK. I have two hats, so to speak. So one of them is with BIDA, the British International Doctors Association. So we are the oldest organization in the UK dedicated to representing international origin doctors and students who are studying medicine or working in the UK. And my second role is within the University of Bolton's Institute of Medicine. So the Institute of Medicine has an undergraduate medical school, a postgraduate medical school, a center for research, and we host 10 centers of excellence. And I head the international partnerships for the Institute, as well as the induction and integration program for medical students. Next slide, please, Nesma. Thank you. Yeah, so this is just a bit of background about BIDA. So it was actually started by some of the first doctors who came to the UK from abroad in the 70s. And it was called the Overseas Doctors Association at the time. The name was changed to BIDA in the 1990s to be, more inclusive to doctors who may have graduated within the UK, but are still have their heritage traced to abroad. So we've got a basically, I'm just going to run through the entire process of sort of going to the UK to study medicine. I know Becca's touched on a lot of the points. My role will just be to sort of add bits and pieces in, tips to help your students, tips to help you as a student, things I wish I knew when I was applying. And I think hopefully you'll be able to gain something from this. So I hope I've covered all the Middle East, North African countries in this slide. I was quite pleased that I found one, which I think I counted as well. So hopefully I got all of them. So it's basically, if you're looking to come to the UK, there's a couple of things you need to keep in mind, which I'll just cover now. So just to give you an overview, it's a primary medical qualification, which is an undergraduate degree. So what this means is you're graduating as a doctor as an undergraduate. So you don't need to do any course before that, unlike America and other countries. You can go straight from high school into medical school. And after 5 or 6 years, you graduate and you can practice as a doctor. One of the best things about the UK is that you've got early patient contact. So you've got patient contact sometimes within the first year or sometimes even within the first month. So as soon as you start your journey as a medical student, you're going to have access to patients, you're going to be speaking to patients, you're going to be communicating with them, and I think this has a huge role to play in how you develop as a clinician, because the earlier you have this contact, the better you understand how to build a rapport with a patient. Sometimes appointment times may not be as long as you would like, but you still need to be able to build that relationship and communicate effectively, and address any concerns the patient has, and I think this early patient contact is incredibly important. Next, you've got a huge emphasis on patient safety and communication skills, as well as compassion. So patient safety is sort of at the core of all medical school curricula in the UK. It's at the core of what the GMC or our medical council expects from doctors. And it's also, I think, what patients expect from doctors as well. So patient safety is one of the core values of medicine in the UK and medical schools. Compassion is extremely important. So how you speak to a patient, being sensitive when asking difficult questions, especially when you're breaking bad news as well. It's not just the clinical side of medicine you need to understand, but it's also the personal touch. And like my colleague said before, it's an internationally recognized degree. You can study medicine in the UK and go back to your home country. In many cases, you can go back without writing any exams. Some countries may have certain requirements that they need to have, so please have a look at that. Some countries I know in the Middle East and North Africa region also have a sort of approved list of medical schools. So unless you graduate from those, you wouldn't be able to practice back home. So please do check that before applying. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, so these just summarize some of the bits I've mentioned. Thank you. Yeah, so challenges for international students. So I think this is the main, the sort of thing which everyone's quite concerned about. I think with international, so most medical schools have a cap of 8% on international medical seats. And this can be quite a challenge because medicine's already quite competitive. And then when you add this 8% cap, you're just making it even harder to get in. And the reason why I've mentioned this as the first one is because they have recently, over the past 5 or 6 years, come up with, there have been medical schools that have come up which are exceptions to this rule. So you've got schools like Bolton, you've got UCLan, you've got Buckingham. All 3 of these schools do not have a cap on international medical school places. And I would urge you to have a look online and find some of the other newer schools. They would not have a cap. So this really helps with your application. It increases your chances of getting in. And newer medical schools, the reason that they've chosen not to have this cap is to do with government funding. It's not to do with the quality of the education. All medical schools in the UK are, stringently regulated by the GMC, which is our medical council, and they undergo rigorous audits and checks. Next, English language qualifications. I know this came up in the previous talk. So I think there's 2 elements to English language qualifications to keep in mind. One is what the university would like, or the medical school would like, and the second is what your visa requirements would require. So basically, most medical schools will offer you exemptions from writing IELTS and things like that if you've achieved, say, this grade in your IGCSEs or in your IB or in your A-levels. These can be found on their website. There will be a separate section marked exceptions. If you don't find it, you can always email the admissions office and they will tell you. The reason why I said visa is another thing to consider is because for some countries, in order to be issued a visa for you to study in the UK, you will need to undergo an English test or a requirement. If these are the same as the exceptions in the medical school, that's great, but that's just something to keep in mind because we don't want you to get all the way to the end when you're applying for the visa and you realize that you haven't done a certain exam. The UCAT, I know, is another, I think, challenge for international medical students. I feel that within the UK, there's more support for preparing for the UCAT. The exam is more sort of aligned to the UK way of education and learning. And I think sometimes international students who may be familiar with a different education system or may not be familiar with some of the elements of this exam may find this quite tricky. Again, there are some medical schools which do not require the UCAT. Please do check online. A few that come to mind are UCLan, Buckingham, and Bolton, but please do check. And as well as some not considering the UCAT, there will be other medical schools that will look at it, but they don't place too much of a weightage on it. So some medical schools will publish, all of them are supposed to, but some will make it easily publishable as to how they use their UCAT score. So some of them will say you just need to reach a certain score, and above that, we'll interview you or we'll consider you, or something along those lines. Whereas you've got other medical schools who will take the UCAT quite seriously, and then they will rank all the candidates based on their UCAT score and only interview, say, the top 1,000 or 1,500. So since all medical schools are supposed to publish this information, I would urge you to have a look. You would have your UCAT score already by that point. So I think it would be really helpful for you to play to your strengths. So if you've got an excellent UCAT score, then those are the places which you should be looking to apply. If you haven't done so well on your UCAT, then you should be aligning your university choices based on their admissions processes. Next, MMI interviews. Again, I think there's also the physical barrier of sort of going to the UK, which has been addressed recently. Since COVID, you're seeing a lot of medical schools now having their interviews online, which is fantastic for international students. And I'll touch upon that a little bit later on. And lastly, induction and integration. So I think, moving to the UK to study medicine at the age of 17 can be quite a big jump. It can be quite a big step. And I think integrating into the UK, not just culturally, but also, work-wise and study-wise, can be quite challenging. And it's always important to seek out a university which has some support around this area for international students. I will show you, I will list some other resources you can use to guide your students in this area as well. Yeah, so this is just a very rough timeline. I may be off by a month or so, but this is usually how it goes. So July to August, September is when you do your UCAT and work experience. Work experience was touched on by Becca earlier on, but I'll come to it a bit later in my presentation. October to December is usually the application deadline. And the reason why I say October to December or January is October is the UCAS deadline. So if you're applying to any medical schools through UCAS, October is the deadline. But as I said, as an international student, you can apply directly to a few medical schools, which I will come to later on, and their deadlines are usually later in December, January. So if you do miss the October deadline, or you've applied at the October deadline and you'd like to improve your chances with a couple more medical schools, you do have this later deadline as well. You've got interviews approximately between January and April, where you may have to go to the UK or they'll be done online. And then April, May onwards, you'll be receiving your conditional or unconditional offers. And hopefully, if all goes well, you'll be starting in September. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the UCAT, this is, again, it has different sections in it: verbal reasoning, decision-making, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, situational judgment. Sometimes international students I've seen struggle with situational judgment. I think a lot of the questions and the alignment of the learning points with that aligns quite closely with cultural norms in the UK. So it's important to get as much practice as you can with all the various sections, especially situational judgment, just to make sure that you stand the best chance of success. Next slide, please. Some medical schools, like I mentioned, do not require this exam, and it's important to have a look at this because just in case things go wrong or just in case you want to back up, it's always good to have that to hand. So writing a personal statement. So this is something which, it varies per course, but I think for medicine specifically, there are certain things that you need to include and you need to reflect on within your personal statement. So you want to talk about yourself, you want to talk about, who you are as a person, what makes you the right fit for the course, but equally you've got a work experience element which you've done, which could be in any healthcare setting. Becca's right, you don't need to shadow a doctor. It could be with anyone in the healthcare industry. And the idea is they want you to have an understanding of how it is caring for people. They want you to have some experience, some real life experience in the field that you're applying to. Next slide, please. Always remember to reflect. So it's really, really important that you don't just write about what you've done, but sort of what you've learned from it. And I'll come to that a bit later. So these are some of the themes that medical schools are looking for in your personal statement. And it may not be possible to cover all of them, but do try, and if you have any sort of experience within these areas, please do include them in your personal statement, because this is what medical school admissions officers love to see. Next slide, please. And work experience. So yeah, like I said, it can be anywhere. It can be in any healthcare, setting. It could be in a GP, local community, mental health clinic. And I think international students really have an advantage over home students in this area specifically, because some of the experiences you can get in your home country would be very different to students in the UK. And often these are things that stand out to admissions officers. So although it is a challenge that, most medical schools are capped at 8%, the experiences and some of the elements you can include in your personal statement and your work experience, I think you've definitely got a chance to stand out, because you may be able to work in a rural healthcare setting, which wouldn't be possible in the UK. You may be able to see surgeries done with the bare minimum of equipment and without the expert equipment or scans that people need. So I think it's definitely something to have a look at. Next slide, please. Yeah, so work experience. So I think just have a look at this first one in front of you on the screen. So this is someone writing about, some work experience I did. I did my work experience at a GP clinic where I observed patient consultations. Now, it's a decently phrased sentence, but as an admissions officer, it tells me nothing about, what you've learned or what you've gained from that experience. And if we just go to the next point, please. So this is a good example. I observed patient consultation. I was moved by the compassion and empathy displayed by the doctor as they actively listened to the patient and offered medical advice. So this is better because now I sort of have an idea as to what you've learned, because everyone's going to say that they went to a GP clinic or they went to a hospital. We know it. We know that, you would have gone there because it's sort of part of the process. But this really helps us understand what you've learned. And this is really important. And if we can go to the next point, please. And finally, this is a great example of how you can incorporate your work experience. So say, I learned the value of actively listening to patients and creating an environment in which they feel encouraged to share, and I hope to incorporate this into my practice in the future. So now this is a great example because it tells you how you're going to sort of imbibe sort of learnings from this and incorporate it into your practice. And that's what medical schools want to see. They want to see that you're a reflective learner. They want to see that you reflect on your experiences and you're always looking to improve yourself. And medicine is lifelong learning, it's lifelong reflection, and it's lifelong improvement of your skills, your patient manner, and your clinical knowledge. Next slide, please. Interviews. So this is the tricky part, I think, for some. Some may excel here innately, but with interviews, you're going to have in-person or online interviews. If the medical schools you're applying to don't have online interviews, don't worry. They recognize that as international students, you do need to travel there. So if you have an interview date in January, February, and March, and if you email them, usually they don't allow date changes. But if you explain that you are an international student, most medical schools will make exceptions, and they will see if they can move around the dates to fit your travel schedule. So this is another advantage you have as an international medical student. And like I said, since COVID, many medical schools are now doing their interviews online, which makes things much easier. They also have interview sessions within the Middle East around once or twice throughout the year. So you may be able to book onto those, and this just helps with travel and staying in an environment you feel comfortable with. Next, you've got two types of interviews. So you've got MMIs, which is what the majority of medical schools use, and then you've got traditional interviews. So traditional interviews are quite rare. They're usually done in places like Oxford and Cambridge, and the interview process for them is a bit different. Maybe I can touch upon that in a separate presentation, but the majority, 95% of medical schools will have the MMI interview. And the MMI is called a multiple mini interview. So what it means is you will be put into several stations or several rooms, virtual rooms or in-person rooms, and each station you will have a task to do. So it'll either be, next slide, please. It could be something like, why this university? Why do you want to study medicine? Why this course? And like I said before, each medical school is very different. The way they deliver the course is different. Although they're regulated to very high standards, they all have their own unique sense of how they want to deliver the curriculum. And it's really important to have a read of this before your interview and even before applying, actually, because there may be something about a certain university or certain medical schools and their way of teaching which really resonates with you. And that may be why you want to choose it. So this will definitely come up in your interview. So you definitely want to know why you've chosen that medical school and why you've chosen that course. With regards to the university, again, some medical schools will have, specialties in certain areas. One may be, really good with rural medicine. Another may have an excellent neuro center. So it's really important to have a look at these things before. Similarly with the course, so each medical school's course is delivered differently. Some would have, a large emphasis on problem-based learning, which is where you sort of get together in a group, you discuss with the guidance of a tutor as to how you would treat a patient or how you would address their health needs. Whereas in other medical schools, it can be a lot of classroom-based teaching, a lot of traditional lectures. Many a times, medical schools are moving towards a sort of an integrated approach where they have a bit of both. But again, some will have something called a spiral curriculum, where you will revisit the same specialty within each year of practice. So just to give you an example, you may learn about, the cardiovascular system in year one. But then that's not where it ends. They will revisit it in year 2, where you will learn something different about it, and then year 3 and year 4 and year 5. And this is called a spiral curriculum, and it's one of the new sort of up and coming ways of sort of learning, and it's really taking off within medical education, and a lot of medical schools are now using this method. Next, you may be asked questions about certain controversial topics like strikes and abortion laws. And I know everyone has their own, sort of reasonings behind why they would choose one side or the other, but it's important within the medical school interview to be quite balanced. So you need to be able to give the pros, you need to be able to give the cons, and you need to be able to give a balanced statement at the end. And medical schools are not looking for you to take a side. They're looking for how your thinking and how your analysis of a certain problem, how you sort of go through this process yourself. So it's important to list the pros, list the cons, come up with some sort of a balanced statement at the end. There's a lot of resources available online to prepare for medical school interviews, and as well as different organizations like BIDA who can support you with mock interviews and things like that. And there's also clinical communication skills. So like Becca said earlier, communication skills are really important. Medical schools really want to see that you're a good communicator, and there will be a station around this. It may be something like explaining something to a patient, and they just want to see how you interact with them, what your body language is. If you're sitting sort of crossing your arms and then you're just leaning back, that's not really what they want to see. They want to see you've got an empathetic tone. They want to see you've got good body language. They want to see that you're able to look patients in the eye when you're speaking to them. I know there are cultural differences when it comes to some of these things, but it's important to just understand what medical schools in the UK are looking for, because this is what you'll be putting into practice over the next 5 years and throughout your career. And again, group working and team working. This may or may not come up. It's one of the less common stations, but it is sometimes asked, where you're put in a group and they observe how you work in a team. So are you sort of being rude to people? Are you involving everyone? Are you being encouraging? Are you putting in the effort? So these are just some of the elements they're looking for, but it's all about effective team working. Medicine, your career in medicine will be full of teams. You'll be having to work with other doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, and others from the multidisciplinary team. So it's really important that medical students and prospective medical students have good team working skills. Yeah, next slide, please. So if things don't go to plan, I think it's always important to look at a backup, or to have something at the back of your mind. Obviously, we don't want to get to this area, but it's always important for you as counselors and agents to know how to support your students. So one option is taking a gap year. You could take a gap year and reapply. This is an option that is quite common, and within that gap year, you could help improve your CV. You could do different experiences or work experiences in different settings. You could contribute to different medical projects, whether it's research or audits, wherever you are. You don't have to be a medical student to do them, and it just helps beef up your CV. Next, you've got joining a foundation year program. So this is another option which many students take, but I think it's important to note that joining a foundation year program doesn't guarantee you a place at the medical school. It's just sort of a preparatory year where they will go over some basic anatomy and sciences. So it's important to keep that in mind and not to be misled thinking that it's a guaranteed spot the next year. Next, you've got alternative degrees and reapply. So you could apply for a bioscience degree or something else, and then do that, finish the 3 years of that, and then apply for a graduate entry medical degree. A graduate entry medical degree would be only 4 years as opposed to 5 years. So if you've done a degree before, that's 3 + 4, which is 7 as opposed to 5. So this is another common route taken by people who may not wish to take a gap year or join a foundation program. Next slide, please. So this is the BIDA Student Wing. So this is the student arm of the British International Doctors Association. And just like to let you know, all of our support is free. So for the past 50 years, we've been offering free support to doctors and students. And BIDA Student Wing is the largest and only organization within the UK that represents international medical students. We've got members from 40 different nationalities, and they're all studying medicine within the UK. I actually founded this student arm a couple of years ago, and it's incredible to see the diversity of students and members that we've got since. Next slide, please. We've got a lot of fantastic opportunities and support from those across the medical field, from the Royal Society of Medicine, the British Medical Association, and the Royal Colleges. And all of our work here is to support international medical students, because we recognize it's a big jump. We recognize it's a new country, it's a new system, and we really want to support you in any way we can. We offer mental health support, pastoral support, as well as career guidance webinars as well. Next slide, please. We also offer teaching series close to exams. You may have learned certain topics, but these are just sort of 1 hour webinar series where you can, just refresh your knowledge, ask any questions you may have. It's a sort of a pre-exam prep series. We've delivered over 200 free webinars, and membership is free. Everything is free. So if you are successful in getting to the UK to study medicine, I would highly encourage you to join this organization. Next slide, please. Like I said, we've got students from 40 different nationalities, and our executive committee is incredibly diverse. And this year, half of our execs are women. So it's fantastic to see that diversity as well. Next slide, please. So after graduation, so you successfully made it to the UK, you finished your 5 years, and now you're graduating. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a background as to how the UK's healthcare system works. So it's the National Health Service. It's a government body which basically runs most of the hospitals in the country. There's different areas to it. So there's a primary care, which is where you've got general practice or GPs, which is your first point of contact. So if a patient has a flu, they have a cold, they have a headache, they go to see their GP, and the GP can address most of their issues. If they feel that they require any further care, they may refer you to a hospital, which is where you'll get secondary and tertiary care. So these are more sort of specialized sort of areas of medicine, such as emergency medicine, or you've got cancer and different elements of that. And then just last slide, please. It's just a brief overview of the UK training structure. So if you look at this, you've got the first on the left, which is your medical school, which is about 4 to 5 years. After that, you've got foundation years, which is 2 years of basically rotating through different specialties within medicine. It could be within surgery, within the medical specialties, general practice, and basically it's to give you a taste of different elements working in different specialties within medicine. Following your foundation years, you need to choose where you sort of want to fit, whether it's the GP track. If you really enjoy working with patients in the community, that may be the path for you. That takes about 3 years. The other option would be whether you want to go into medicine or surgery as a sort of broad specialty, and that can take up to 8 years. So those are the sort of training paths. And then at the end of it, you become a consultant. Many of you from the Middle East may wish to go back home at some point. So I know the CCT, the Certificate of Completion of Training, which you can see at the bottom just before consultant. So that's incredibly valuable in the Middle East. That basically means you're ready to practice as a consultant. So you can come back and you can practice as a fully qualified consultant. So you can come back at any time, but I would always urge you to look at the regulations, look at the guidelines, look at the best time to come back and at which stage. But thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sai, for this presentation and amazing resources. I didn't know that was all of that was available for students. Mindful of the time, because we also have Dr. Ahmed with us, who's been waiting for a while. Do you mind we take one question and then we go to Dr. Ahmed? And if there are any questions we could respond to, I could compile them and share with you and circulate, or if you could respond in the chat, that would be also.
Perfect. I think let's go
Would that
through.
work?
Yeah. Could medicine applicants get access to BIDA resources? Absolutely. So if you Google BIDA Student Wing, you'll see our Instagram page, and you'll be able to access all of our resources from there. There's sort of a link tree which goes there. There's a website called Medol where we do all of our teaching. It's completely free to access, and you'll be able to see all the webinars we do, and you'll be able to join in as well. There's no issues there. Can I switch from dentistry to related field in medicine and study in the UK? So medicine is they're known to be quite rigid in their requirements, that they don't allow you to transfer credits from other courses. You may be able to apply for medicine while you're doing dentistry, but I'm not familiar with a way in which you can switch midway through.
Thank you so much. We have a lot of questions. We'll try as much as I can to compile them and share the responses from our amazing speaker, Dr. Sai. Thank you so much once more for this comprehensive presentation. This has been very useful. Dr. Ahmed, are you with us?
Yeah, still here.
Thank you for joining us today. Now I have another first-hand experience, another practitioner from the UK. You're speaking to us from
Imperial, actually, inside London. Yeah, I'm just in the library, so I booked the room to do that.
Thank you so much for being with us today. And our audience would definitely appreciate your input. So we've mentioned earlier, you're a Chevening scholar, you're an educator, you are a doctor, of course, you're a clinical researcher and a PhD candidate. So you have experiences across the whole journey. So the mic is yours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you for surviving until the very end. So I'll make it brief. So my presentation gonna include 4 main points. I didn't prepare PowerPoints just to be practical, and all the reflection we're gonna talk about is after studying medicine in the UK. So because basically studying medicine is not the end, right? When you get to the medical school, it's not the end. It's all about what is after. that will be just, 6-7 years of studying, and then what is next? That's the most important, I believe. So I just prepared something. It's called Mentimeter. I use it a lot in teaching here at Imperial College. It's anonymous platform. So simply you just, scan the code in the screen or go to menti.com, and just enter this code. And then you will provide live responses, and it's totally anonymous. So nobody will know who answered what. So these, I'll just present these 3 questions. I'll reflect on each of them. So until you figure out how to join, a brief background. So thank you, Nesma, for introducing me. So my name is Ahmed El Boksomaty. I'm originally from Egypt. So I studied medicine in Egypt as undergrad, and then I got Achieving Scholarship. I studied Master of Public Health at Imperial College. I worked in different aspects inside the UK and out of it. So I joined University of Cambridge as academic clinical fellow in HR, and University of Cambridge in GP training for 2 years. I worked at Imperial College in different positions. At the moment, I'm clinical research fellow, and also I'm practicing in the private wing at Imperial College NHS Trust as clinician. Other than that, I worked as a consultant in WHO for 5 years overall in different countries, including the headquarters in Geneva and other places, and I do some other consultancies in health policy. So basically, I'll just reflect about this first question, which is basically the first part that we will talk about very quickly, very brief, within 2 minutes. What do you or your student, if you are an agent, want to do after studying medicine in the UK? Usually, once you finish your medical education anywhere worldwide, you have one of 3 options, right? Maybe when you are in high school or something, you don't really realize that there are too many options once you finish medical school. We just have this image of, oh, I finished medical school, I'll be just a doctor in the hospital. Believe me, it's not the end, right? Believe me, it's a very exhausting life. I don't want you to put you down, but people really got depressed if you practice full-time, 24/7 in a hospital anywhere worldwide. It's not the best option, right? Generally speaking, let's say it's either to practice as a clinician, or actually people go purely into research and health policy, working for WHO and that kind of things. And then there is the third option, which is mixed between clinical medicine and research. So if you studied medicine in the UK, I can guarantee you, based on first-hand experience, whether undergrad or postgrad inside the UK has very good reputation in terms of medical schools, as including even postgraduate degrees. So if you want to practice as clinician inside the UK, that will be the NHS option and so on. If you travel anywhere and they know that you have graduated from the UK, you practiced in the UK as clinician, that will open for you a lot of opportunities. And I will talk more about the clinical practice once you graduate. If you want to work in research and health policy, again, based on experience, UK it can be, I can't say the best, I'm not sure about the statistics, but it could be one of the very best to prepare you to work in research and health policy. Because inside the programs for undergrad and postgrad in the UK medical education, there is a big deal of research and work in health policy. So I have been working with the WHO since 2019. I worked 2 years full-time with them, and so far I do consultancies anywhere worldwide. With the WHO, I keep doing consultancies with them. I worked for the UN since 2015 with the UNHCR, and I know how the UN system and the WHO select people to work with them. And I can tell you clearly that UK graduates from medical school or postgraduate education, all these organizations, they trust them. They trust their background work in terms of health policy, how they think about research, how they understand research and the policy work worldwide. So studying medicine in the UK is going to open for you this opportunity compared to studying medicine anywhere else can actually be negative when you apply for these organizations, because basically they will think, oh, you are just a hospital doctor, you just practiced clinically, you know how to put a cannula in, you know how to do echo, you know how to do a surgery. And this is not the work of WHO, right? The work of WHO just health policy and that kind of coordination of services and so on. So they need someone who studied comprehensively medicine and health related fields. And in UK, you can get that. You definitely will get that if you study in the UK, either undergrad or just postgrad. And the third option, which is amazing here in the UK, is the mix between the clinical and research. And believe me, whatever actually you realize it now or later, you will realize later, working, as I said, full-time inside the hospital forever, it is not practical option, let's say, you know? So you have to find a kind of work-life balance by somehow. So you have to mix between clinical and research. You need some time to refresh your mind, to be updated with all the new guidelines and so on. And when you study in the UK, there are a lot of, as what I mentioned, some of these titles, actually, there is a lot of academic clinical foundation, academic clinical fellowship, clinical research fellowship, and so on. So that mix of clinical research, it's very rare to find anywhere else in the same manner that is inside the UK. So when you finish, you can mix between the clinical and research. You work, let's say, 2 or 3 days in the hospital. The other days you work in research. You will find some flexibility in these terms. And this is actually what I'm currently doing, and I used to do with the University of Cambridge as well. So basically, I'm currently doing 24 hours overall per week in clinical medicine, and I do the rest as research, which is part of my PhD, right? So long story short, these 3 options are all guaranteed if you studied medicine in the UK. And then the next question, you will find it in your screen. It's the same code, the same everything, just to reflect about thinking of practically, or let's say practicing medicine as a clinician. Where do you or your student would like to work, maybe, because I just drafted the question, after studying medicine in the UK? And this is very, very important question. You, if you are a student, or you, if you are an agent and you just wanted to advise your students about it, they have to think, where would they like to practice, you know? And I know maybe the attendees now got exhausted, so maybe you will not participate that much, but I have been providing a lot of induction sessions in all top universities. I used to work in Cambridge, and now at Imperial College in Oxford they deliver, and too many places. And because this is anonymous platform, so people just feel free and drop the answers. And as you can see here, it is not surprising. It is not surprising. You can see here, actually, NHS UK, you will find very little. Unfortunately, it's true, you know. It is not discouraging. The NHS in the UK is almost one of the best healthcare system you can find worldwide for people, you know. But if we are talking about clinicians, all of us during studying medicine, you will develop ambition. Lives can change, you know. You could move with your partner somewhere else. You need the freedom to work as a doctor worldwide. And studying in the UK can give you that opportunity perfectly well, even if you don't want to practice as researcher or anything, you just want to be a clinician. And I'll explain very little, just one word about each of this. So to practice in the NHS in the UK, if you graduated from the medical school in the UK, definitely this is the best option. You get used to the system, you know everything there, and so on. So basically, that's guaranteed. In Australia, once you finish your medical school, you just practice 1 year inside the UK, and then you are qualified to register in Australia, and you directly move there. I mean, if we are talking freely, it's better salary, but maybe the quality of life, it's just a kind of question. It's up to you. But what I mean, you have the option to travel to Australia directly, practice there after just practicing 1 year in the UK. In Europe, generally, once you finish your medical school, it depends if you have the language or not. But if you have the language, it's quite straightforward process in most of the European countries. If you get CCT, like complete the certificate of completion of training, and you become a consultant in the UK, in most of specialties as well, you can practice as a consultant in other European countries. In USA, it's quite different, so it's very, very big story. But unfortunately, if you graduated from the UK, you still have to do USMLE, which is, you know, to get your qualification in the US. But just the positive part is, as we all know, if someone is searching know, studying medicine in the USA can be very, very expensive, and it's extremely competitive to get positions after studying in the US, you know? So a lot of people, they study medicine in the UK. It could be relatively expensive, but you study medicine in the UK, you practice in the UK, you get what I said, it's very valuable in the UK. You get the research experience, you get very good CV, very good portfolio. So once you finish, you do your USMLE, which is fine. And then when you apply for posts in the US, you will have very good advantage above anywhere else, any other graduates, because you have very good portfolio in research. And whether you know or not, but US care a lot about it. It is not just about, being a clinician, right? In Gulf countries, which is very important as well for many people. So basically in Gulf countries, most of the people, as long as you're registered with the GMC, in most of the Gulf countries, you don't need to do any further qualification exam. You're already registered. Some of the countries, they put like 1 year experience in the UK as well before moving and so on. But long story short, you can directly register in the Gulf countries. For example, Dubai, I'm just in the process even to do it, and a lot of friends, they do it. In Dubai, for example, you just register directly in Dubai Health Authority. I think it happened all over within 1 month or 90 days, and you get your registration. You can practice in the Gulf countries as you like. And if you finish your CCT, you become a consultant there as well. And everyone, again, whether you know at this stage or not, if you graduate from the UK, if you practice in the UK, if you have CCT from the UK, you have higher value and higher opportunity to be hired and to get better salary, let's say, better positions in Gulf countries compared if you are even consultant in one of the other countries. So they value a lot the graduates from the UK. Moving around the world, that's why I just put in the first slide, you have to be practical. Practicing clinically only will not give you that opportunity except on leave, in your annual leave. Okay, but if you want to move around the world, maybe the research and health policy can give you that kind of flexibility and doing consultancies with WHO and so on. So far, I mean, I got a lot of scholarships, to be honest, and I got a lot of positions with WHO. But with WHO so far, I tried to keep count. So I traveled so far to 52 cities worldwide, I think in 16 countries in just the small missions with WHO. And all of that, actually, I started with WHO directly after my achieving scholarship, directly after my Master of Public Health in the UK at Imperial College London. So what I mean is, at certain point, even if you want to take 2 or 3 years exploring the field of WHO or the UN or blah, 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 just to travel worldwide, to have the experience, and then later on practice, you have this opportunity with the UK system. The very final part, it's 2 minutes, very final question. It's what do you want ultimately after studying medicine in the UK? And I put it there just as a kind of confirmation of what I said earlier. And you have to talk with your student if you are an agent. And if you're a student, you have to think about it. Think honestly, answer honestly. I understand medicine is something, about morals. It's totally acceptable, but it's your job as well. You need money. People, as you can see here, the answer, because again, it's anonymous, so people feel free. I need higher income. I need work-life balance, which is later on, you will realize that work-life balance is way more important than higher income. Because in some countries, you can get millions and millions of pounds, but you work 24/7. So when actually you will enjoy that income, let's say, and other people, they just care about prestigious position. What I can, again, maybe I'm not, I mean, I'm promoting, to be honest, to study medicine in the UK and that kind of things, because I felt it, I felt it there, and I know worldwide how it goes. So in terms of income, let's be honest and clear, higher income in the UK, it gives you the income that is good enough for you to live in high standard of living, but it's not the best income worldwide. But as I said, it's just a step in the way. If you need just money, regardless anything else, let's be honest and clear, and no one can say something else, just move to the US, But as I said, play it well. So if you studied in the US, you will pay a lot of money in studying medicine, and then you will not have very good opportunities. If you study the UK, once you finish your study, practice a little bit in the NHS, you might change your mind about work to move to work-life balance point. But what I mean, when you apply then to the US or blah, 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 where a lot of money, or in the Gulf countries, maybe the income can be better or so on, when you are graduated from the UK, you will have better value to get opportunities and to get the options worldwide. At the moment you think only about yourself, let's say, later on in life, once you have family, you have partner and so on, your whole priority is going to change. Maybe the country that you have been dreaming for ages, once you have a partner, oh, you will change your mind. Now I want to go somewhere else. And all my plans are vanished. No, if you study in the UK, you have the options, so you can still move. Work-life balance, I guarantee you, UK is good. All right. This is like, yeah, this is sure. But as I said, just the mix between clinical and research. And then in terms of prestigious positions, as I said, you will feel if you are CCT'd from the UK, either in clinical aspect or research aspect and so on. I travel to a lot of countries just giving talks, training, and so on. Once they just put under the name, oh, University of Cambridge, Imperial College London, everyone started actually think, oh, he's like, oh, that's whatever he said, we believe it. Actually, maybe the people attending like are way better and they know way better than what I do and everyone else. But once you have that title of these prestigious universities there and prestigious places there, everyone gonna look at you high, you know? So in terms of prestigious things, you will find it satisfying when you study in the UK. And as I said, prestigious position as well with all the UN organization, international organization inside the UK, it will provide you something that sooner or later you will realize this is the most important factor you have to focus on in whatever field you are studying, medicine or whatever it is networking. Networking in the UK, you can't imagine the opportunities that will open for you. You will find these UK universities collaborating with every single international organization there. You will find in London or outside of London, like a hub or maybe an office or something for every single international organization. So that can be your start to move worldwide, to move into these organizations, whatever, Save the Children, British Red Cross, all UN agencies, and even locally, local, let's say, we say it local organizations in the UK, but they are international, but they are based in the UK, you know? So that will open for you a lot. Maybe I will not talk a lot about the scholarships just for the sake of time, but there are a lot of scholarships in postgraduate aspects. Maybe it's country specific or something, but one of the most famous one, the one I deeply happy that I got is Achieving. So you have Achieving scholarship. It's worldwide. There is no limit about the country you can always apply for. And actually, it's now the application now is open. I think it will end in close in November. This is to study master degree after finishing your medical school or even in any other field. There is a lot of other scholarships. Maybe it's not the best time to talk about them now, but you will find a lot of opportunities as my colleagues presented earlier. Go to any of the UK universities' websites, just to go to the scholarship section. You will find all the opportunities there, including achieving in almost in every single university you will get in the UK. And maybe I can say that because, again, overall, over the last maybe 7 or 8 years, I got exactly 17 international scholarships, right, including achieving. So when you go to any university website, the UK university websites are so user-friendly. It's so easy to navigate through. Other places, I will not mention names of the countries, just to get into the university, you'll find, oh, we have a master, we have a scholarship. Yeah, where is, there is apply, where is the link to apply, where is to click to apply? You will find it not user-friendly. So long story short about the scholarship thing, just to get into any of the university's website, and you will find it very user-friendly. You'll find a list of a scholarship either for this specific universities or any others. So yeah, I'll make it short, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ahmed, for this. It flowed very smoothly from what also Sai was speaking about. So like we're closing with the next steps, and then now we're exploring the employability aspect of a UK degree in medicine and all the different opportunities, and he took us in different fields, not just the clinical practice. Questions? Let's try. I'm mindful we're past our time. We'll stay a bit longer to take a couple of questions, if that's all right with you, Dr. Ahmed. Is that fine?
Yeah, it's fine. Sure.
Super. I'm not sure because I don't come from the medicine background, but there was a question from earlier about UK MLA exam. Would you be able to share insights about that?
Not a lot of it, because it's so basically it's the new qualification exam. It's the UK MLA. Yeah, so it's the new qualification exam that will replace for international students. It will replace PLAB, which is the qualification exam for international students. But at the same time, as far as I know, even UK graduates will go through the same exam as it is. So it's usually just a kind of OSCE exam questions, kind of stations, and you just pass through these stations. It's not complicated one. There are a lot of resources that will be published. You will find the GMC website, and other websites, a lot of videos, a lot of, webinars about it. It's not that too complicated. But yeah, again, it's just the OSCE exam as any exam you would take in the medical school, whether in the UK or outside of it.
Amazing. I'll ask you one question about scholarships, since you mentioned winning 17 scholarships so far. So what is your like tip for everyone's thinking of supporting their students to get a scholarship? How can they help them? Where can they point them to, other than locating the scholarship, but how to actually get the scholarship?
I think the key point is always just apply. Seriously, I mean it, because some people they just don't overthink it. Just look at the basic criteria, and if you are fitting these criteria, just apply. And just to try to, what I always advise with is just try to know how to kind of promote for yourself. So all of your colleagues and all of us actually almost did the same during the medical school. We all went through some presentation, some little research experience, and so on. It's all about how you phrase it. And I think my colleague who presented earlier, Dr. Sai, he did amazingly that examples of personal statement that represent actually how it's different from a person to another. Two persons or three persons did exactly 100% the same as each others, but each one of them gonna be in the example. One who just put, oh, I attended 2 months in the GP practice, and the other put some more details, and the third just, was able to offer more of the information that is relevant to it. And the key point is always try to apply. This is the key important aspect. And also you have to email, because a lot of scholarships, they put some condition that you may think, oh, I'm not fitting the criteria, or you have some questions. Don't just keep questioning yourself. Drop an email, someone will get back to you. It is not like in any other country, and I know what I say. You can drop a lot of emails to a lot of universities worldwide, no one will respond to you. Almost in all UK universities, when you drop an email, someone will get back to you and advise about what you can do.
That's super. Thank you so much for that. Yes, so a lot of the time we're the people who say no to ourselves, so we reject ourselves before even trying to apply. So that's an amazing advice, 100% with you. Thank you very much for all our speakers, and for our attendees for staying a bit over time. There are Dr. Ahmed, thank you so much for being with us. This is very insightful. What I will do next is very briefly give you two highlights, two next steps. We have 4 agents and counselors, and if you can stay with me for this 1 minute, so that I can share with you their news. We have a piece of news. You've already, if you're on the hub, if you're registered on our Agents and Counselors hub, you would have received this piece of news. Now you can use, I am a UK certified agent, a UK certified counselor. If you have completed the training on the hub, and if you have completed the assessment and signed your code of conduct and consented that you're visible on our global public database. If this information is new to you and you don't know enough about the hub, colleagues, please do share the link to joining the hub in the chat. Colleagues will share that, and I'm happy to circulate previous webinars where we speak in detail about what is the Agents and Counselor Hub and what is becoming a certified UK counselor, what's the value of that. So you can officially now use that if you have completed the training. So that's the first piece of news. The next piece of news is that we're next week, on the 15th of September, we're going to have an Agent and Counselor event in Riyadh in partnership with UCAS, and you've met Becka today, but you can meet Becka in person in Riyadh on the 15th, and myself also, I'll be there, and UKVI colleagues will join us to answer visa-related questions. And then what's happening in the UAE, we have on the 23rd of September, colleagues are visiting Sabis schools to give a session about our hub, so you could meet the team. Nancy and Maharoop will be there. in Dubai also, Nancy and Mahroub will be present in BMI, which is some sort of a conference for counselors, school counselors in particular. And then on October 30, there's an event for Asians and counselors also in UAE. So what I wanted to say is keep an eye on our country events. We're going to have something in Egypt and Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi, and Oman. So it's not only going to be online, we're going to meet you as a team in person. And colleagues have already shared the survey to this event. I hope we were able collectively to answer the questions you had around supporting students go to the UK for medicine majors. And so please make sure you take the survey. If you haven't signed in, please sign in the login sheet so that we know who you are and we're able to share with you the resources. And we'll see you in Saudi Arabia. If you're based in Saudi Arabia, I can share the registration to this event in the chat in a second. All right. And if you're not on the hub, make sure you're on the hub. This is my contact email. Feel free to drop me a line if you have any questions about today's event. Thank you so much for being with us today and for staying that long. The webinar recording